I have today one of the best guests ever. This is Amber Dekker. You probably haven't seen her a lot on the show because this is her first time hanging out with me.
Yep, on the show for sure.
Yeah, she hangs out with me all the time at the client celebrations and at family events and just things that we're doing in general in life. And Amber and I have come, with the whole family, to have a unique relationship, one that really is built on love.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
In fact, what have you come to really appreciate about what I call you?
She calls me daughter-in-love, which at first I was like, what? I don't understand. And now I love it. I love that term because daughter-in-law and mother-in-law, they have such nasty connotations. When I hear the term mother-in-law, I immediately think of misunderstandings. I think of conflict. I think of just an awkward relationship that where the son or the husband is in the middle and is kind of pulled between both women. And I think that's just an image that we just want to do away with in our culture. There's no reason why we need to have that.
No, and we don't.
Yeah, and we don't.
No, if in fact sometimes I'll stick up for Amber and Ryan's in the doghouse.
Yeah.
Right? Which
now, it wasn't always that way. At the beginning, we had, the awkwardness of like, okay, what are your expectations? What are my expectations? How do I fit into this new family? That kind of thing. So we had a bit of an awkward time at the beginning, but then we just made it work, right? We were committed to each other. I'm just as committed to you as my mother-in-law as I am to my husband. And
mother in what?
Oh, mother-in-law, mother-in-love. Sorry. It's because I used the term earlier. That's because I just used the term. Yes.
I know, and it's fine because we talked in an earlier show that sometimes those words that we have taken out of our vocabulary because they're still in our subconscious come sliding out, and we don't even know we've said them.
Yeah, it's true. And we hear it in our culture so much, right? It's like we're fighting an uphill battle sometimes where you just hear it around so much. And so I like fighting for daughter-in-love and mother-in-love because I just love that.
And so I bet you're wondering, why is Amber on your show? And it was really neat because it fits together with even why she ended up coming on the show, really.
Yeah.
And that is, we accidentally, can you believe it? I interviewed another Amber. And while we were sending out the updates from our team thought I meant this Amber.
There's not that many Ambers in the world. So.
Right. And so Amber got a request from our team to say, hey, do you want to come on the show? And she sent me an email going, Mom, what? Why am I on the show? And I said, you're not. And she goes, yeah, but... So we figured out eventually that it was actually the other Amber that I'd already spoken to and coordinated to be on the show. And so we put it to rest. And then as Amber was thinking about it, she went, why couldn't I do a show? Because of the impact that the Dekker team and the Dekker family has had on my life.
Huge impact.
And it's because of our real estate business that we've had the opportunities that we've had.
Yeah.
And so she talked to someone else. So, I mean, one of the concepts is a good idea is just that when one person has it. Any one idea, generally speaking, only becomes great when I expose it to other great thinkers.
Yes.
And so in the process of Amber thinking about, hey, maybe I could actually do a show, she didn't voice it to me. She voiced it to one of our other mentors and really good friends. Mm-hmm. And when she expressed it to him, he said, well, of course you could do a show. We can tie what you do in your day-to-day life with the Dekker team.
And which is awesome because there actually are a lot of similarities in what I do and what you guys do in terms of taking people out of one environment they're comfortable in and putting them in another environment, physically even, with houses and and things.
Oh, and same with you.
Yeah, with trips.
So we're going to share a little bit about how Amber does that and how it connects together, and then how the Dekker team actually has created that synergy. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
So Amber, what do you do every day besides take care of my grandchildren and my son?
I work with Hungry for Life, which is a Christian nonprofit organization where we work with churches that want to engage in international projects and missions trips, and we help them do it more effectively. So yeah, that's essentially it in a nutshell. And we're all about transformation, just like the Dekker Team is. We're all about transformation of the people's lives when they go on trips, the people who they go and come into contact with internationally, and also just with the local church, just creating a new passion.
And even local organizations.
And local
You don't
organizations
actually have
too.
to be a church to take on a missions journey.
Yes.
And to go to, well, lots of different companies, right?
Yeah.
Countries.
Yeah, we work with groups of nurses, we work with schools, we work with just pretty much anyone who wants to get involved in a project internationally. Yeah. And
so there's going to be some intense training.
Yes, there's some intense training involved. It's just like with real estate, when you're changing environments, there's a lot you have to explore and a lot of ways you have to prepare yourself. We do a lot of training with culture shock and how to navigate those waters, especially when you're with a small team and you're with each other 24/7. When you're going through culture shock, it doesn't just affect you, it's going to affect the whole group. That's one example. But also we do a lot of work with people spiritually before they go on these trips. Most people want to go on a missions trip thinking they're going to be changed when they go on this trip and hoping for that. And that's one of the purposes they go on it. And what we say is, why are you waiting for the trip? Get transformed before you go on the trip so that you're more effective that way.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's really neat. And in fact, Ken has been on a trip with Hungry for Life, a missions trip to Africa. And that was life-changing for him.
Yeah, and Ryan, my husband, was also on one, and it's actually, I knew Ryan growing up, and I just saw him as little Ryan, because I'm a bit older than him, and but
Ryan's claim to fame, can I say it on air?
You can say it.
Okay, Ryan's claim to fame is that he married his babysitter.
It's true, I babysat him once.
And why only once?
Only once, because he was a pretty intense little kid.
And he made you cry.
He made me cry. I left crying. I was like, I'm never babysitting there again.
And quite some time later,
I give him credit. He was a sweet little boy, and he turned out amazing, which is why I married him. But I actually remember him speaking at the front of our church about how he was called to go on this missions trip. And it changed his life, just his whole view of finances, his view of relationships with people, his whole purpose in life. Before that, I'd always thought, why do people go on missions trips? I thought of mission tourism. I thought of, it's just too expensive. Just send the money, you know what I mean? And looking at how it changed Ryan's life made me change my mind, and eventually I ended up getting involved with Hungry for Life. And just seeing the transformation of my husband alone was one of the big motivating factors for that.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
I love when things come at you organically.
Yes.
Like come at us. You didn't go out. Amber did not go out looking for, hey, I want to be in mission work for the rest of my life. Amber is actually a high school teacher.
Yes. Yeah.
And you traveled to high school English, traveled a fair bit of the world teaching and in Canada as well as a high school teacher.
Yeah, and it was while I was teaching, actually, I remember teaching a unit on child soldiers to grade 6 students in BC. It was part of the curriculum. And I remember teaching this unit and thinking, I don't want to be teaching English anymore. This is what's really important. This is where my heart is. And it got to the point where I couldn't teach anymore. I had to get involved in helping alleviate the physical poverty around the world. I was so compelled. I couldn't keep doing what I was doing. I had to devote my life to that. So,
wow. And as Amber's husband is a realtor on the team and involved with a lot of the investment side of our business, Amber's been able to watch how the two fit together.
Yeah.
And I think at first it was confusing.
It was very confusing. Yeah. I had all these questions of, is it okay to spend money? Should I buy all my clothes secondhand? Do we sell all of our furniture and sleep on the floor? Like swinging from one pendulum side to the other, right? As a person can do. They can go quite extreme when they're trying to figure things out. And I actually got a lot of my balance through my husband and your family and my family, just seeing people's hearts and seeing how money works and how it works in society, and how just how God is in control of money. And I've really learned that through the Dekker Team, that it's not about money, it's about God touching your heart and telling you what to do with your personal finances and just with your role in life.
Yeah, the pendulum piece is something I just want to touch on that Amber said that I think is often fascinating. And that is when we learn a new concept or see a new perspective in life, often the pendulum may be here in terms of how we're living our life. And at that time when we get the insight, because that's why it hits us the way it hits us, because we're living this way. And then what you would expect is I get a new insight, so I'm going to come sort of to center. And yet what happens is, and Amber's expressing, is she was living a certain lifestyle, and it wasn't overly lavish or over the top, and yet it was a very Canadian lifestyle. And then she saw and experienced things that were uniquely, vastly different, that were way over here on the pendulum. And so for a while, it's like, do we even sleep in a bed anymore?
Yeah.
Should I be sleeping on a mat?
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily what she's to do. And yet it took some time for that pendulum. It kind of swings like this until it lands somewhere here.
In a balanced...
Yeah.
That takes all perspectives into consideration.
Yeah. It just kind of, and we land in the middle somewhere, which we don't want to say in the middle as a sellout. We're saying in the middle because the pendulum over here wasn't what she was called to do.
Too extreme.
Right. And if she had been called to do it, she would have done it.
Yes.
And I think all of us would. And yet there's this journey that has to happen most of the time. And what a great example. So Amber does not sleep on the floor.
No, I don't. I have a bed.
Yeah, which is awesome. And one of the interesting things is through the journey, I think, for them, and you've heard Ryan on some of the shows already, and he gave up TV.
Yes.
And that wasn't really because of that particular reason. It was more because of what can he do with his time.
Yes.
What will happen to my life if I don't get sideswiped by getting sucked into a TV.
Yes.
Right? That really was what it started with.
Yes.
And it's taken the whole family on a journey.
Yeah, it really has. One of the things that I've really learned from the Dekker Team, and just from, it's funny, I often forget I'm not a realtor because I'm so inundated with Dekker Team culture, if you will, that I have to keep reminding myself, don't give realtor advice or anything because I hear it so much, right? So one of the things I've really learned that's translated into my life and is translated into the way I work with churches and in my ministry is how the Dekker Team, you guys put such a focus on growth. I had come into the family thinking growth was just academic growth. You need to get better at what you do, but the personal growth, the self-growth that you guys focus on is really inspiring. Just as in terms of, as realtors, always, you guys are very cutting edge. You're always aware of the market.
It's called the bleeding edge.
Oh, bleeding edge.
Yeah, the bleeding edge. No, yeah. And the reason for that is you actually cut yourself and you bleed when you cut. So
gotcha.
It's when you take a risk. I mean, I can remember buying our first digital camera. And I think it was 1.2 megapixel, and it was, I think, about $6,000. And so that was absolutely the bleeding edge, because you do a lot of bleeding when you step out and do things that are maybe not the norm, that are not the accepted way of doing things in an industry yet. So absolutely, it's cutting edge, and it hurts.
And it hurts.
And yet the great news is I think it's a little bit like the pendulum. Eventually you work your way through and you land somewhere that really works and makes sense. And you figure, and by the time it becomes mainstream, you're already well integrated into living and being that way.
Yes.
Right? And I think that's what you're saying. That's really what growth is about.
Yeah. Yeah, it's about recognizing I need to change. And I think a lot of us don't always take time to stop and reflect and say, what do I need to do better? What do I not just career-wise, but personally. How do I take where I'm going and make it even further? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I don't want anybody to think that we don't love who we are just the way we are and that we don't love you just the way you are. It's that there's always more.
There's always more.
And it's not a striving anymore. I think when we first started on this journey 2.5 decades ago, or maybe even more than that, it was because our life was falling apart. And we were about, and I've shared this, I think, on air before. If not, then brace yourselves. Ken and I were in a relationship where hatred was really the only emotion that existed. And from that horrible place, and financial destitution was taking place, and we were heading down a horrible path that way, and our kids were not doing well, and life was just horrible. And it was based on the choices we were making. And so when we came into the idea of growth and moving forward, for the first several years, it really was a striving. It was this, how do we make it happen? And that's hard work.
Yes.
And so what we've come to learn is that we can actually surrender all that stuff and find a place where we are able to thrive without. Doesn't mean I don't have a role to play. It doesn't mean I just sit back and wait for it all to happen. And it's not this strenuous, difficult, arduous striving. It's a letting the opportunities come to you and being prepared for them in advance and then seizing them.
Yes.
It's fun to grow.
Yeah.
And it's not that there's anything wrong per se. There may just be a slightly better version of me.
And the growth that I find most effective, at least in my life, is when I feel God prompting the growth, where I feel a nudging in my spirit saying, Amber, this is an area in your life that you need to deal with. And when God brings something and puts something on your heart, it may not feel the best timing for you, but it really is the best timing, because when he's prompting you to change something, it's because he's going to give you the strength and the skills to change, and he's going to be with you through the process. So I once heard this analogy of a teacher saying to students, that the students were saying to the teacher, why are you reading so much? And that, the teacher would be reading during lunch break or whatever, and the teacher said, because I want you to drink out of a flowing stream, not a stagnant pond. And that actually stuck with me because it makes sense. And so when I work with churches and things, I am no one to give counsel and guidance if I'm not growing myself and if I'm not really spiritually striving for God and seeking Him out and making Him my number one in my life. And so it comes to a certain amount of integrity there too, right? Where you can't, just like with you guys, it would be difficult to be offering people advice if financially you guys were a mess, right? It's just one of those things. You have to be really at the top of your game in the area that you are offering guidance.
Right. So if you're just joining us on the Inside Track on Real Estate, we've been talking with Yetta and my daughter-in-law, Amber Dekker, about Dekker Team and how it relates to her entire life.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool. So if you're just tuning in now, absolutely you're going to want to go back and listen to one of my favorite people share from her heart. And we're talking about growth, right? And growth making us be all we can be, and being able to, because of the growth we're having, being that flowing stream rather than the stagnant pond. I love that. I love it. And that's the first time I've heard it. So we obviously haven't spent enough time together, Amber. In the real estate experience, can you imagine if I stopped learning about the new things in real estate and even reestablishing the old things, how ineffective I would be in helping a client, right? It would be malpractice.
It would be scary.
It would be scary. So to constantly be growing and moving forward is so that we're able to bring the best tools, the best marketing, the best strategies, the best opportunities to our clients, whether they're buying a home or selling a home, and in fact, the best options. Because what we generally do. Had one of my clients last night, we were working on selling one of their homes, and she's in another country, 16-hour time changed. It's difficult, so we got on the phone, and she said, I know you're not going to tell me what to do. And I said, she says, you never do. And I said, well, that doesn't help you. What I'm going to lay out for you are your options. And we're going to discuss the merits of each of the options. So I will absolutely explore them thoroughly with you and have the skill and the expertise to do that with excellence. And at the end of the day, it's not my decision. Although I treat your money like it were my money and your house like it were my house, it's not up to me. Right? So if I hadn't constantly been growing, at one point I thought it was up to me. I would tell people, hey, this is what you need to do. And who likes to be told what to do? Not very many of us. We want to have our options laid out in front of us. And because we're constantly growing and moving forward, we know what those options are in today's market. Right? In today's culture, in today's economy. Not that of 15 or 20 or 30 years ago. And I think that's what you're saying about your ministry too.
Yeah.
Because even ministry options.
Really changing.
Hugely changing.
And international projects and working with developing countries, that's constantly changing as well.
Because we find what didn't work.
Yes.
Exactly. And we learn by failing forward.
Yes.
So that's probably, can we talk about that for a little bit?
Sure, yeah.
The whole idea of failing forward, what does that mean to you, Amber?
That is an awesome thing I've learned from you guys. I used to just be terrified for a while to start anything because I would feel like, oh, what if I fail? And particularly for people who struggle a bit with self-esteem or self-confidence, the idea of failing is terrifying because it brings your whole not existence, but your whole value as a person into question. You identify with yourself as someone who failed, and that's crazy.
Why is it crazy?
You cannot be a human and not fail. It is just not possible. Talk to any parent. There is no parent out there who will say they've never failed. Absolutely.
Well, and even when we think about just learning how to walk.
Yeah.
Right? Like one of your little ones Svenja has just recently learned to walk.
Yeah.
And how many times did she fail?
Oh, she falls all the time. And can you imagine if the first time she failed, she went, that's it. I shall never walk. I shall sit here forever. You know what I mean? Like, it'd be crazy. And somehow we, as children, we know it's okay. And I don't know what happens between being a child and growing up where we start to think it's not okay to fail.
And what happens when we don't succeed? Because I would say we actually never fail.
Yeah.
I would actually say that we either learn or we succeed.
Yeah, is it John Maxwell? Sometimes we fail.
Sometimes we learn and sometimes we succeed and sometimes we learn.
Yeah.
And so succeeding is accomplishing the thing you wanted to do, and yet where did we get the idea that the first time we did something, we were going to be good at it?
Or even the 10th.
Even the 10th, even the 100th. Just Dan is the gentleman that records that you never see on this show. I'm going to get him on the show at some point because he has been a client of ours. So we're going to get somebody else on the other side of the camera one of these days, and he's going to talk with us. However, that may take some more years. We're only a couple of hundred shows in, so we'll have to see. We were just chatting this morning about the first show we ever recorded. And it took us about 6 hours to record 28 minutes. It was a failure. And it's still out there. I don't want you to go watch it. I think it's still, you could go watch it.
Remove the link.
I decided that it's okay for people to see the progress and for me to see the progress. So that took us basically an entire day to record 28 minutes.
Wow, what a difference from now.
And so if I had after that first show said, we're failures, can't do it, because it was a failure. Really, in the scope of what we accomplished, and it wasn't good, and we were umming and ahhing, and I don't know, it was just bad. And because we learned from that, we evaluated the experience, learned what we did well, and then continued to practice the behavior. right? Now I still think there's lots of learning we can do. We still have places to go. We've not arrived by any stretch of the imagination. And yet, if you turn a camera on me, I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to fumble for my words. As long as you ask me something I have some knowledge of, I'm going to be able to move forward with you.
Now, there was a time you were terrified of public speaking.
Oh, yeah, that's another story for another day.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And so let's make sure we share with people Marketplace Ministry, what that means to you and what you do and how the Dekker Team aligns with that.
Yeah, I had never heard of Marketplace Ministry, the term, until I married into the family. And at first I thought, what is this? I didn't understand it. And I remember coming into the office at 11 o'clock and seeing everyone in the office getting together and praying for the clients. And that just blew me away. I thought, wow, I never thought of that,
A business?
A business would do something like that, would take time out. And it's fundamental to what you guys do. It's one of those things that I would say kind of epitomizes your heart, is that you're not just in it for helping them sell houses. You are in it to help them just transform through the process of selling the house and buying a house. It's a very stressful experience. And
it's in the top 5 of stressors that people experience in their life.
Yeah, and so you see people go through all kinds of emotions, and you walk them through that whole thing. And I don't know if a lot of other realtors do this, but I just find this so unique about you guys. And the fact that you'll offer to pray with clients, like with them, even if they don't profess to have a faith, you'll say, well, would you like to pray? And I think that's just wonderful.
And they don't have to.
Yeah, they don't have to.
We don't at all. We love people of all faiths. We are connected to so many amazing people that don't share the same life philosophy. And that creates us to be part of the human race.
Yes.
Together. And I love doing life with people of diverse beliefs and backgrounds, and still being grounded in what we know we're about.
Yes. And you are, I guess I love that your beliefs and your faith so permeates your lives that it naturally comes out of you. And so you are obviously open to everyone's beliefs, and you are respectful of it and everything, and you're still willing to say, I'm a person of faith. I'd love to pray with you if you'd like to, and I just think that's awesome.
And so if you want to go on a missions trip or learn more about what Amber can bring to your organization, your church, how do they reach you, my friend?
You can go to hungryforlife.org, the website, and find out more that way. Or I suppose you could contact the Dekker Team.
Yeah, absolutely. So Hungry for Life or info@Dekker Team, and we will get you in touch with Amber if you want to have your life transformed and the lives of others through Hungry for Life experience. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What you wanna do? Well, man, it's on